just so small rectangular objects. They're called books.
Welcome to episode 55 of Unlocking Great Books.
Hey, Sean, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Carl.
Look, and before we get into the book, and for those of you watching on YouTube,
yes.
What happened to your head? Did you fall off your bike?
I had an incident with a door yesterday, but not of my own making. I had this experience of walking into the office yesterday, so this is a great way to start your day.
Yeah.
About 20 past 8, reaching down to grab a door, and all of a sudden the door's coming towards you at a high rate of knots.
Did it sit you on your butt, or did you just...
No. I just had that horrible feling of I've got a cut on my forehead, and that that's a place that bleeds, and you can feel the warmth, and I just went, uh-oh.
You poor thing. Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're better. I'm glad your beautiful brain isn't hurt.
Well, that was a big thing of yesterday, just making sure.
Given you live your life in your head. Hey, what are we doing in episode 55?
Today, Slow Productivity by Cal Newport.
Right.
A long written author. Guy's done lots and lots of books, and I think it's a really interesting concept to explore.
Yeah. So what's the subtitle?
It's the lost art of accomplishment without burnout.
Yeah. And so in this episode, we're going to talk a lot about how useful this book is in terms of if you're a knowledge worker who feels slammed and who doesn't.
Yes, yes. And what is productivity?
Yeah,
we're
great.
kind of mull on that a little bit.
So that's going to be good. But along the way, we're going to ask some pretty important questions about...
Well, here's a line from the back of the book, which kind of captures, the opening, doesn't it? It pushes us to treat busyness as a proxy for useful effort, leading us to impossibly lengthy, taskless and ceaseless meetings.
Right.
Now, who hasn't lived that life?
I love that. So that's great. And look, it does exactly what it says on the tin. But but in this episode, we're going to critique it too. We're going to talk about how useful it is.
Well, we unlock.
We're going to unlock
books,
great books,
so
and we're going to talk about the notion of autonomy.
Yes.
And how autonomy is a privilege.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
And we might also talk about that thing we seem to always go back to, which is that conflict between structure and agency.
Oh, 100%.
We'll ask 100%. A really interesting question. If this had been a French book, it might have involved strikes and people on the streets and barricades rather than productivity hacks. That must be
a great line. Yeah. If this was a French book or this was a French movie. I think everyone knows what we mean.
Yeah, that could be great. No, but this is going to be interesting. And I think... for the first time ever, we're going to link it to Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which has got to be a future book, doesn't it?
Oh no, I think we do.
We have to do
a little teaser for that. We're going to have to do that.
Okay, so let's dive in. Let's tear into Calvin Newport.
Calvin.
All right.
Has he been naughty?
All right.
Cheers.
Books. I need my books.
So, the lost art of accomplishment without burnout. What a subtitle.
It's a great subtitle. Slow Productivity, the lost art of accomplishment without burnout. Right. So this is Cal Newport, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So,
yes.
What do you know about Cal?
Well, Cal I find him a deeply fascinating guy. So,
right.
I first heard of him a few years ago. And... we really needed to do a Cal Newport book. So
we'll come back.
Was a request.
We'll come back and see if this is the right.
Cal's a computer science professor.
Yeah.
And he was a computer science professor before he's an author.
Yes.
But I found his research area. So he's Georgetown.
Yep.
His area of research is distributed algorithms and also systems in nature. So he's this interesting guy. It must be a fascinating field when you think of algorithms and learning from nature and all that kind of stuff. But it's computer science. So, and he seems to have this very distinct split, and we'll come back to why, because I find it quite admirable, actually. He's got a very distinct split between, it's almost like my daytime job is lecturing, and my other job...
Well, the link, mate. So first of all, so he's got a PhD from MIT. So that's, not only does he teach at Georgetown. I was in Georgetown last September, but not only does he teach at Georgetown, but he's MIT trained.
Yes.
So that's interesting. But it's his blog, isn't it? The online blog that he started about study habits, which is what led to the focus on distraction and then productivity.
Yeah.
That blog's now got 2 million visitors a year.
Yeah, so it feels like his origins were, I'm an academic, how can I help the students who are coming either into university or college in the States, and then how can I help them be successful? That seems to be his passion.
Totally.
And he's done 8 books.
Yeah, we'll come back to that in a sec. So Calvin, of course, is his real name.
Yes.
Cal to his mates.
Yeah.
I wonder who calls him Calvin. Probably his mum.
Yeah, of course.
And the arresting officer, right?
when you're in trouble.
Now, interestingly, we'll come back to this.
Yes.
His grandfather was a minister and a theologian.
Oh, interesting.
So there's clearly a string of there's some influence there, which we'll come to
spiritual
when we talk about quality and work. So the Study Hacks blog started in 2007, and that's the thing about how do you perform productive work.
Yes.
How do you perform productive and meaningful work in an increasingly distracted digital age?
Yeah.
Not bad, eh?
Yeah, and I think that his subject matter has evolved from how do I be, almost successful academically, or how do you reach your potential as a student, and it's evolved more into the deeper topics of
So
the online world and tech and.
So one of the things we'll have to talk about is the value of this book if you come to it cold. Like if it's the first Cal Newport you've read.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Actually,
as opposed
given
to,
he's done 8 books.
Yeah. So the ones that I know really well are So Good That They Can't Ignore You.
Yes.
2012. Deep Work, which we teach.
That's the first one I
2016, and then A World Without Email.
Yeah.
2021. Deep Work, Rules for Focused Success in a Distracted World. Funny, for some reason I thought we'd covered that already, but we haven't.
I feel
this
like
is our
we've
first
talked
Cal
about
Newport,
it.
right?
Yeah, because that was the first time I bumped into Cal Newport, and I absolutely love that book. He's done digital minimalism as well, and what I just wanted to jump on his distinct split. So him as a person, I love that he walks the talk. So when you read an author and you're kind of like, you don't know whether they deeply believe in. Okay, I guess they believe in what they've written.
Yeah.
But do they practice it? And this stuff, as you will unpack a little bit, is full of really interesting things that he actually lives.
Yeah, but hold on to that thought, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a great New York Times critique of this book that basically says, How to Slow Down, written by a very busy man.
That's true.
We'll come
That's
back to
true.
that.
But one of the things he does is if you go to his website, he's got no social media.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe in it. Everything on his website points to someone else. If you want to contact me about my book, talk to my publisher. If you want to talk to me about my podcast, talk to this person.
Okay.
And he's got one email address called interesting@calnewport, where he says, send me anything you want. And it says Cal will read everything, but due to time constraints, he will not usually reply.
Unlike Oliver Berkman, right? Who's trying to.
That's true.
So I guess the point we were making about the books before we move on is he was already a New York Times best-selling author by the time he did this.
That's right. That's right.
So we're talking about
important
book
context
8
in the series.
Cool.
From a guy who's well known.
Yeah.
So
okay. I mean, we know that he's a proponent of digital minimalism. He wrote a book called Digital Minimalism.
Yeah.
But this is really about mindfulness, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I feel like one of the strongest things in the book is what it opens with, where he talks about knowledge work, and he's comparing, and I guess the simplest way, I'll try and do it simply because it's a reasonably obvious conclusion, but you don't see it in the first place, which is this idea that if you think of work and productivity, it's very easy when Carl's out there shoveling stuff into a wheelbarrow, and how many times, we've talked about in other books, the economy runs on how many shovels can you do per hour.
Yeah, productivity is a labor output. Yeah.
Yes, but you see very tangible, measurable widgets, I suppose. Where he's talking about knowledge work, and he's going, have we fallen into this trap he calls pseudo-productivity, where we apply the same principles? I've been seen to answer X emails, I've attended X meetings, and we see that as a measure of the value that's created through knowledge work. Yeah. But that's not what knowledge work's about, is it? Knowledge work, as you work in as well, is about how do we deliver. But
we've talked about this somewhere else, haven't we? This is that difference between outputs and impact.
Outcomes.
And even impact, right? What I do like about the slow productivity approach is he's clearly saying it isn't about how hard you work, how intensity.
Yes.
It's
or
not
how hard you seem to be
It's
working,
not
which
about
is probably
yes,
even worse.
yes. So
Yes.
the 2 points, right?
Yeah.
Interestingly, pseudo I looked up comes from a Greek word meaning pseudes, which is where it comes from, and pseudes in ancient Greek means fake. I didn't know that.
Oh.
So pseudo just means
so it fits.
fake, right?
Yeah.
But what I do like about the whole positioning of the book is it's a riposte to those people that say you have to hustle more.
Yes.
Right. So, so it's really, for me, it's about the pitfalls of that orthodox productivity advice. Manage your time, be better. And the 3 rules aren't there. There's do fewer things,
Yes.
work at a more natural pace,
Yep.
and then
Obsess
over quality. We'll come back to all the 3 of those.
Yeah. So that's the nutshell of the book is like you don't just run around and do a whole heap of stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
when we get into
in
it,
these roles.
when we get into it a bit deeper, right? So if the nugget at the center of the book is do good things, then we have to have a debate about who gets to determine what's good.
That's part of the problem, isn't
That's
it?
part of the problem.
That is, because you talk about the running around doing stuff. That's a reinforcement of the environment,
totally.
isn't it? The corporate environment and things like that.
But if you go back to your point, like he starts with a poll of his listeners or the people on his blog about what does productivity mean, and then he makes this really good argument that no one really knows what productivity means. So that's a problem called semantic ambiguity, right?
Yes.
We use a word, we all don't think we know what it means, but we have very different understandings, right?
don't we? Yeah.
So we have so he highlights that productivity has the problem of semantic ambiguity, but he doesn't do it about good and quality.
Yeah, well, that's a really good point, because I was just going to say, what is value?
Yeah.
That's another word that's got kind of semantics around it, isn't it? So,
I do like this whole idea, though, because it does. We'll come back and talk about this, because it's going to link beautifully to when we eventually talk about Zen and the Art of Motorcycle
That's
maintenance.
right.
Like, what is good, right? What is quality? Because I think that is the hinge around which the book pivots.
yes.
But it's not explicit. But we'll come back and talk about that.
So should we jump through the 3 principles? Would
Yeah,
that be
let's.
helpful?
Yeah, let's.
Yeah. So because I think to some extent, they're self-evident, right? well, they are.
But let's start with the do fewer things
But I
thing.
think the thing with Cal is he's not just going, here's a really obvious thing.
Right.
He's quite a practically minded
Yeah.
person, because as we discussed at the top, he's a guy who does stuff.
Yeah.
He lives a very busy
true,
life, so he's
true.
got to be doing it somehow.
And in when he talks about do fewer things, he talks about the laundry list fallacy, which
Yes.
I find really powerful. That's
So the idea around do fewer things is literally as it says.
Yeah.
The idea that if you reduce your obligations, then you can do the things that matter more.
Yeah.
So this he introduces this idea, and I absolutely love this. It's one of the best things in the book, of the overhead tax.
Yes.
Which is basically
Yes.
this idea that if you have 3 projects going, you need to do things to run 3 projects. If you have 6 projects going, you have to do 6 lots of overhead.
Yeah.
And eventually that overhead starts to actually take over.
Yeah. The actual,
and you don't actually do the work.
Yeah.
And I think we've all experienced that, haven't we? Where we, we talk about overheads and we talk about admin. And I mean, I heard the word admin mentioned this morning from a lady. I've got a day of admin head, and I sat there and I thought, how ironic we're about to talk about this book, because like that loose phrase admin is the thing that he's talking about. And he said, like there's a point where the admin takes away from the core work, the emails, like the meetings.
Well, this is the Eisenhower matrix, right? That great idea of the things which are urgent and important we have to do immediately. The things which are neither important nor urgent we should just eliminate.
Yes.
And yet so much of our day gets eaten up with this admin stuff, which makes no difference.
And then it's also triggered, isn't it?
But remember, the other thing about doing fewer tasks is the switching cost.
Yes.
As you switch between
that's right.
them. Yeah.
And that's a massive thing, isn't it? So,
okay.
So
do fewer things, that's good.
That's good.
Work at a natural pace.
Well, actually, just one more thing on do fewer things. He has a lot of practical ideas. So he talks about contain the small.
Yes.
So the idea of eliminating small stuff. Can you and I mean it's so blindingly obvious. Sometimes you read it and you're like, oh yeah, of course. But the challenge is doing it. So he's kind of saying, instead of bouncing emails back and forth, have a conversation with someone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of writing long
have a
chats,
five line rule. The 5 line rule. Yep.
Do it. Find software that can do stuff for you. Have office hours. So instead of having individual meetings with someone, it's just set a block of time where someone can come in and drop in. And if they use it, so there's some of that stuff which has obviously come from his academic world.
Well, no, the problem as a reader of that book is all of that stuff's come from deep work. The book,
yes, that's right.
That's why I said if you come to this book cold, it's got lots of really good ideas.
But the background to some of that stuff is probably in the previous book. Is that where you?
Well, if you're reading all of his stuff, or this is repeating ideas.
It's true.
But I mean, it's still a great idea.
Yeah.
And it picks up on Berkman's point,
yes,
which is you're always choosing, even if you don't think you're choosing.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. There's always an opportunity cost.
Yeah. One of the really cool principles from Do Fewer Things is the push-pull thing. And this is something I've started to do over the last couple of years, which is this idea of instead of having a big to-do list where you just keep, and most people keep adding to it.
Adding to it.
And you do some arbitrary shuffling and prioritizing and ABC and all that kind of stuff. But you're still looking at a big freaking list half the time. The idea is that you push it all into a holding, he uses the word holding tank or a, like the backlog or whatever you want to call it, and you pull tasks in. So instead of stuff being pushed onto your plate, it always goes through that kind of filter. And what I like about that is it means that you can choose to do 1, 2 or 3 things as a priority every day. So we always hear about the 3 things a day thing, but when you're getting stuff pushed onto you, and this is the danger of leaving your email open, and then all of a sudden something's being pushed into your life, pulling it.
I like it. I like that
as a principle.
Yeah, I do too, and I like that even better than the celebrate small wins idea.
Oh, totally. Totally.
Great.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, principle 2: work at a natural pace.
Yes.
What did you take out of that?
Well, I like the seasonality idea.
Oh, 100%.
Right. So that was the bit that really works for me. Thinking about working in seasons, thinking about your day as being, made up of seasons.
Yeah. That's really good. This is the knowledge worker productivity problem, isn't it? Where you feel like you have to be on
all the time. And what's ironic about that is the research shows that you're probably only productive for half the time. Like in an 8-hour day, you're probably only really productive for 4 hours.
That's right.
So owning that and thinking, where do we put the low value tasks?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
how do you hold
saying
it?
You're not productive. It's just you choosing what to put where.
And that's about the blocking out the time when you're at your best.
Yes.
For the most cognitively demanding.
So is it the mornings? Is it the afternoons? All that kind of stuff. But I also like that idea of you do not have to be frantically busy all the time.
No, but that goes back to your pseudo-productivity notion, right? We have confused activity with productivity. Somebody looks like they're frenetically busy. We often think, they must be really, really productive.
Yes.
It's usually the opposite, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It's funny because I've been doing a lot of thinking about thinking recently for some work we're doing. And, the idea of really creative thinking looks just like doing nothing.
Yeah, and he has some great examples in the book, hasn't he? So he talks about some of the things that we think were, magicked up and the subject of hard work and, intense focus for a short period of time are simply not that at all.
Well, that's not that.
And we know that.
Yeah, that's not how the brain works, right? Incubation is the key.
Yeah, but related to that, and I think one thing I've highlighted here is the simplify your workday thing.
Yes,
it's and that comes back to your task switching thing, isn't it? If you're bouncing back and forth, can you simplify your workday so it feels like a load has been lifted? So that you're not walking into your day
feeling already
and
behind.
opening the inbox and getting everything rushing over.
Well, that's
your
like
head
not checking your email first thing's a great tip. No, I love that. I love that overwhelm feeling piece. Remember, did we talk about this at some point? Somebody famous has got a great tip about when you're planning your New Year's resolutions. Write down the 20 things you want to achieve in the next year, and then look at number 6 through 20 and put a line through them.
Yes.
Just focus on the top 5.
It sounds like a Berkman thing.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Just forget it. You're never going to get anywhere near those.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. One of the little tools that he has in there, the one for you, one for me, and I share this with everyone I know because there's a load of people who go, oh man, I'm so busy, I'm always in meetings and all that kind of stuff. And the one for you, one for me thing is basically if Carl rings me up and says, can we have a meeting on Wednesday?
Yeah.
As soon as I put in an hour for a meeting with you, I block an hour for me.
With meeting with you, yeah. It's for your own time.
For my own time.
Well, one of the great...
that immediately load license, you load 50%, doesn't it?
Well, one of the great tips, I think, in deep work is if you work in an organisation and you block out an hour for Sean and you have a manager that's going to bust in on that,
yes,
you can set that up as a meeting with yourself.
Yes.
And that way your boss is unlikely to go, well, Sean's in a meeting, I'm not going to move that.
That's right.
She doesn't need to know that it's with yourself.
That's right. That's right. So, but all of this is about... And some of the features of the book is that these little wee things where you go, actually, that's very doable.
That's useful. Clearly there's a Things Office blog, right? Like, these great tools that he's tried and worked with.
And probably got the feedback that people like that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And then obsess over quality.
Right. So this is where you... I have to admit, I probably saw this one coming.
Right. Yeah.
But, I mean... quality versus quantity, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it goes into the measures of success. Great little tidbit there about the Beatles. Fascinating.
Yes.
First album, Please Please Me, I think it was the first one, wasn't it? Was recorded in a single day with less than 700 minutes of studio time. Can you imagine that? Banging out a whole album.
Yeah.
And, it's incredible.
Yes.
Sgt. Pepper's took... 700 hours of studio time over damn near,
Well,
3 or 4 months.
I was listening to an interview with an author I love, and he was saying some days he'll write one sentence. Like the output of his whole day's work will be what he'll consider perfect sentence.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
And in other days it'll be, I think, the John Cleese had a great book around creativity, and he talked about how them as Monty Python.
Yes.
Some days they'd write 6 pages of great stuff, and then other days they'd sit there and scratch their heads and go, "Oh, I can't even get one thing out." And then, but overall, it averages out. And
but I mean, look, and we'll come back to a critique of all of this stuff. But I do think that that idea of the notion of quality and also your intrinsic values of is this good enough? There's a great management tip I was taught years ago. Which I never use, but I should. Which is when a staff member,
all good men.
Yeah, when one of your staff brings you a piece of work and says, "Can you review this, Sean?" The question should be, "Of course, but is this your very best work?"
Ooh.
And they'll go, "No, I'll take it away," and they'll take it away and they'll bring it back.
Yeah, interesting.
And then you say it again, "Is this your very best work?"
Yeah.
And likely 50% of them will say no and come back and revise it.
Wow.
So by the time you get to the third time you
Which
ask,
is
they'll say
about
yes.
right.
But 2 things happen. One is you don't have to spend your effort editing shitty first drafts, and number 2, they see what they're capable of because you keep pushing them
because they're learning
to be excellent,
and they're being more
better,
critical of
and they're not.
themselves.
Yeah, that's right. So I love that. So that's
wow.
Okay. So
Look out, whoever walks up to Carl next. Hey, you gonna do it?
No, take my advice. I'm not using it. Hey, but so I mean, what you've just summed up beautifully is that the book is full of these tools and tips.
Yes.
That, again, if you haven't read previous work of his...
I put practicality.
Yeah, there's lots of practical tips. So that's good, right? If you're drowning at work, and who isn't, picking up something like this and reading it might give you some tools to manage that.
Yeah, and maybe... what's the word? Allowance?
Yeah.
It's granting you permission, isn't it? That's maybe what it is. It's to kind of go, hang on. Like, is this stuff working?
Okay. So
yeah.
So that's good, right? Do you want anything else you want to say about it before we rip it to bits?
Oh. He's an eloquent writer.
He is indeed.
So this is not dense.
No, it's easy to read.
It's very easy to read.
Easy to share, as
easy
you
to
said.
share. Yep. I like that he walks the talk.
Yep.
And he pushes back against life hackers with real life hacks.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is there's loads of people who peddle software and big, things where he's just saying, just lighten the load.
Yeah.
There's not, yes, there are tools that you can use and all that kind of stuff, but principally you're trying to do the big thing of just backing off stuff, which, So we'll come back to, I'd like to know if you changed anything out of this book.
Yeah. Well, no, look, I mean,
Was there anything in here you went, ooh?
No, but only because the really good stuff in here, the stuff that really resonated, he'd already done in deep work. So,
Yeah, so
I've
you
definitely
picked this
picked up
up.
some
Yep.
of the time blocking things.
Yes.
And like,
Yes.
there's definitely stuff that Cal Newport's helped me do that's helped manage the load.
Yes.
As you said, practical and useless. Useful.
Useful.
Practical and useful. Yeah, sorry, I withdraw that. But
Yes.
but in terms of this book, right, it does feel to me like it's a summary of those earlier books. And that's only a criticism
Yeah.
if you've read those earlier books.
Yeah.
I don't think it adds much to those earlier works.
Okay.
The other thing to think hard about is it's about knowledge workers that have autonomy.
Yes.
You know,
and
like
the autonomy thing hangs.
So it speaks
really-
to us.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
If your boss hasn't read this and
You're in real
he
trouble.
or she's a
Yeah.
slave driving, you know.
also,
Yeah.
it's hard to know what came first, but there's a book by a guy called Greg McKeon and from 2017 called Essentialism.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, which looks
Yes.
just like this book, right?
Yes.
You know, like they're,
So it's not a new topic.
no.
But but I guess Cal's.
Well, Cal's got such a strong
wedging it
brand.
into this.
We think it's Cal's ideas, but Cal may have, and there are
Yeah.
nobody's ideas. But
Yeah.
But if you read a lot of the stuff, I mean, it all ends up sounding the same. The thing that, and we'll come back to why this matters. It does seem very American to me. It's very self-help.
Yeah.
As he gets more famous, he seems to have less to say and take longer to say it.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Whereas, given the journey of the books,
Yeah.
see I mean, potentially the counter there. I mean, I've read Cal Newport's books previously, but this one feels really a little bit more slow down and
Yep.
spend a bit more time with a topic. So which, like
Okay,
you say,
Hold on
is
to
he
that.
is he
Hold-
filling is
hold
he
on to
filling
that,
space?
Hold
or-
on to that thought because I want
Yes.
to push back against that.
Yeah,
But
okay.
I thought this was quite repetitive, and I think he spends a lot of time asserting that his ideas work rather than providing any evidence. I'm an evidence guy. The other thing that drove me insane was what are we supposed to learn from Jewel and Alanis Morissette and John McPhee, for God's sake?
Yeah, that's a good point.
These guys are superstars. John McPhee is, I don't know if you know John McPhee's work. He's one of my favorite writers.
Right, okay.
He's brilliant. He used to write these long form articles for the New Yorker, about a collection of books. The guy seemed to write, he was so productive. Jewel and Alanis Morissette.
Yes.
Like, what are we supposed to learn from these guys?
Yeah, good call.
Yeah.
That is something that, he picks, he's talking about creatives
Yeah.
in the book, but
Yeah.
the book's about professionals.
Exactly.
And
I mean,
those
you
two
use the
things.
Beatles example, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Though, I
what
mean-
they're the Beatles, for God's sake.
Yeah, that's true. It's true.
like,
It's true.
So
Yeah.
again, back
Yeah.
to survivorship bias.
Yes.
You're taking a group of very successful people.
Yeah, and then going, which is the classic.
Yeah, and how do we know that there aren't other bands?
the
that work-
classic heroic
Yeah,
book.
but
the
how do you know there
self-help
aren't
book, isn't
bands
it?
that worked as hard as the Beatles, and didn't get anywhere near their fame? So there's that problem. But my biggest problem with this book, and again, it's only in the context of what we read and reading more broadly. If you come to this book cold, it's a different book. But I couldn't help thinking, what does this tell you that you don't get out of 4,000 weeks?
True.
Right, this is about being mortal and choosing carefully.
Yeah.
I just thought Berkman did it so much better. We covered Berkman in episode 6
Yes.
of our podcast. I mean, I think Berkman does that. Everything has an opportunity cost. You're mortal. Life's finite.
So is this the subject matter thing again here, isn't it? So if we contrast this book with Berkman's talking about life. He has a lot of instances and examples from life, his own life, which is a lot more relatable, isn't it? Whereas this book runs talking about pseudo productivity, knowledge work professionals with lots of examples from the art
But don't forget
and creative world.
Don't forget that Berkman started with a focus on productivity.
Yes.
Like his blog.
Yes, of course.
I mean,
Yes.
my understanding of that is, he stepped away from that column to write a book about productivity and kind of had some
And then went, well-
road to Damascus conversion.
Well, yeah, because he was the guy with the productivity tools, wasn't he? So
Exactly.
he was sifting
Yeah.
through and then he went, oh my God,
Oh
I've
my
been
God.
sold a lot of crap.
Yeah, so- exactly,
Yeah.
right?
So, yeah.
So that's the bigger argument.
Right.
So let's go back to what we keep talking about when we
Yes.
read American books. Let's go back to the agency and structure argument. So why are people having to bloody hustle so hard?
Yes.
Why are they needing to work so hard? The people that need to hear Newport's slow down message
probably-
aren't the knowledge workers.
No, it's
It's
CEOs.
the employers and the bloody business owners.
Yeah.
This is policy and cultural problem,
Yes.
not an individual motivation problem. And of course, because he's American, he doesn't even start talking about that. Imagine if a French author had written this book. Seriously, right?
true,
It would have been a very different book.
I would struggle with the language. But
Yes, but there'd have been riots on the street. People would have gone on strike. Like stop making his work so damned hard.
Yes.
Rather than
Yeah. Can we make
yeah.
work?
You think about. I think those are major criticisms, right? And Newport, I'm sure Newport would respond, well, that's not who he wrote the book for. Like the book is aimed at busy professionals struggling to get through their day, working with knowledge in the United States. And we sit back and go, but you're assuming these people have an enormous amount of autonomy. So you're talking to a very privileged group of workers.
And autonomy is variable, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like we know that.
Yeah.
And potentially,
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of blanket statement, but generally speaking, the American workforce culture is very different to the rest
Very
of the world,
different.
isn't it?
And so hustle's much more of a problem, right?
Yeah.
We know all of that. Reading it here, it's useful, but the more you stop and think about the problem it's solving, there's a problem behind the problem.
Oh.
And the problem behind the problem is how we structure our companies and how our businesses work.
Yes.
So, in many regards, I see it as a Band-Aid to a symptom.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean it's a bad thing.
It's not helpful, but
those things can be incredibly
we all
useful.
need Band-Aids from time to time. As
But go back to, if you want to play the deep philosophical game, that notion of quality, you think about how hard Persig grapples with quality in Zen of the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Like, what do any of us know about what is good?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Good,
and when you think of it in a business sense as well, like it's incredible.
Yeah, so that's the point, right? Does he mean good in a business sense as being profitable?
Yeah.
Are we
or the best possible outcome or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
Look
Because
out.
the examples he uses, McPhee, Morissette, Jewell and the Beatles, they're all successful because they're commercially successful.
That's right.
There are plenty of people that did great work that's endured,
that didn't get
that
the quality.
died in poverty in their life, right?
From that perspective.
Think about all the
Yes.
famous artists.
Yes.
So if the more you put on your sociological lens, the worse this book gets.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that I didn't find it useful and valuable.
Yeah, good. Nice. That's a very good critique. So, okay, here's probably a closer for you. This book or his other books?
If I was asking, so that's interesting. I'm pretty sure you say this book because you've loved this book.
No, I probably wouldn't actually.
If you're asking me, what book has he written that has the most practical tips about how to handle being busy in a knowledge job? I'd say Deep Work.
Yes.
I use Deep Work in my critical thinking training. I love Deep Work.
Yeah, I
as
would
a guy.
do the same.
Okay.
I would do the same.
So why did we review bloody content?
Because it's just come out.
Right.
This is the thing. So So
because this is 2024, isn't it?
Yeah, this is last year. So it's important. I think it's important to call out these more. We're talking about one of many books here. So if you, this is that whole. It's good to read other books from the same author, isn't it? So if you were looking at your bestseller list, Cal Newport, Slow Productivity 2024, that may not be
that's
the book.
Yeah.
To your point,
Yeah.
this is from a long lineage.
Yeah. So if you find yourself reaching for this in the bookshop, go and look for Deep Work instead.
Yeah, and there's plenty of authors like that.
Yeah.
So it's good to read more than one book from the same author. Potentially. But also doing a little bit of a scan on what books have been out.
God, so that's an interesting outcome, isn't it? Like not this. We're not saying this could have been an article, and we're not saying it could have been a TED talk.
No, but your call is good because it's predicated on his previous work.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's a very valid point that you can find in previous books.
Reader's back catalogue. Okay.
Yeah, and it's not always. I mean, I like him as a writer. So I like one of the things from reading this book, I will go back and read more of his.
That's
books.
a good point because unlike some other books where you've had to grind through them, the great news is this isn't going to take up more than an afternoon or a day of your life. And it's got some interesting stuff and it's engaging. It's got some good stories.
Yeah.
And we've done now is we've done exactly what he asked us to do, right? We slowed down. We did fewer things and focused on his book. We worked through the book at a natural pace and we obsessed over quality.
Yeah.
And the book came up wanting. But that's not how most people read it, right? It's exactly what we talked about with management books about, most people just don't sit down and read management books
airport books.
cover to cover and they don't stop and reflect on it deeply.
Yeah.
And when you do,
you pull out these other
you come
things,
out with
don't
a
you?
different perspective.
Yeah. So
Because it is funny. I'm glad you made that point. Because when I read it first, I thought, yeah, it's good. I like it. It's got some useful tips. Move on to the next book. And now when I read it again for this podcast, I was like, hold on a minute.
Right.
Let's just slow down here.
one thing with Cal though that you can almost guarantee with his books, and I've experienced this with the 2 or 3 that I've read.
Yeah.
3 that I've read actually. Is there's always something you could take
Yes.
and do
Yes.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that's a
I
big tick for him.
No,
so,
good point.
and I'm intrigued as to what other things are in there.
Yeah,
Those other books, so-
and we should say, I mean, and what we know is it's no point somebody just giving you a tip without context and explanation
right.
and a story.
That's right.
So, okay. All right, I can buy that.
But definitely not book that should have been an article.
No.
No.
Well,
like,
well, it's quicker. It's easier to read than some long form articles.
100%.
All right. That seems like a great place to end it.
Absolutely.
See ya.
Thanks, Carl.